Oh, they're going to be sticklers.
Yes, all 17 subscribers.
Yeah.
We got
Anyone currently listening now?
Not yet.
Or
No.
No one waiting, as they say.
No. Well, there was one waiting, but that may have been Rob.
Oh.
When I checked, I'm actually not on the chat, so I don't know. Although I can
Well,
see.
I'm on the chat, and I see
Okay.
Aaron and Timothy and me. So apparently you're not on the chat, but you're an antisocial fucker anyway. So
That's true. So we are live. I just got the email. We're good.
yeah, same here.
All right. Welcome, people, to the 3rd episode of Masculine Geek. It is Wednesday, 9 o'clock. Your same bat time, same bat channel. We're waiting for, well, I guess technically 2, but we're waiting for TJ and Jarrett. Said he'd be joining us later. So we're here.
So Aaron, what's TJ? Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
No, it's okay. I'm not sure what TJ's. He did mention, he did say something he'd be on in the text message. So he replied.
He gave me the runaround, almost like I was talking to a 24-year-old girl. I'm like, hey, TJ, you want to chit-chat about the serious, important stuff we got going on? No, I'm kind of busy right now. I'm covering. I'm picturing him like flowing hair. He just tosses his hair back. I'm covering the legislature. I'm very important. I have no time for you. And then I'm like, oh, Jesus. Okay, fine. I'll go away.
He was being a circle jerk. He was the pivot man. It's okay for him to admit it when he gets on.
Yes, seriously. He's just wrapping things up. But Aaron, I was going to say, you had mentioned something on episode 1 about way in the mists of time when you were a DM, you received an award.
Oh, yeah.
For DMing, yeah.
DM, yeah. But I mean, it was just voted by a bunch of 30 nerds that were in the group. I mean, it wasn't like I went to states or finals or nationals or anything like that.
Gotcha. National D&D Dungeon Master. Yeah.
I mean, you thought I got the girls beforehand. When I came back with that trophy, Susie Johnson did go out with me then.
That was a complete panty peeler.
Yep. And then I leave it in the corner of my bedroom, and girls, oh, what's that? No, that's not. I play coy, that's nothing. That's no, really, what is that? Well, back in 1989, I won DM of the Year award. And they don't even unhinge the bra; they just rip it right off.
They tear their clothes.
But yeah, they tear their clothes off. Like Hulk Hogan tore his shirt off in Hulkamania.
There you go.
Rip their clothes off. Yeah,
and of course you leave it conspicuously in the corner. Just, hey, check out my stuff. Here's
this. He's got one of those art lamp lights on it.
There you go. Over there is where my smoke detector used to be. And what's that in the corner? Oh, that's nothing. That's nothing. That's just my trophy from 1989. I was kind of a big deal then.
I'll tell you this. Back in the day, I was very good at what would we call it, the feng shui of getting girls into the. I was going to say getting girls into the office, getting girls into my apartment or my house.
So your room had a good bang shui.
They had a good bang shui. Yeah. No, it was. And like the right art, what's the artist name? Ty Wilson. He would paint romantic. But I like the art style. It was minimalist but simple, and I wouldn't say cute, but pretty, but in a masculine way. There's one where it's just a guy in a tuxedo. He's got flowers hidden behind his back, and he's leaning over to kiss a girl who's in a dress. And so that was up there. And then I'd have like Casablanca and other some Cary Grant flicks. Maybe out on not put away in the CD case, but put, on the table, kind of open. And what movie is this? That's not that you wouldn't really like. Said, no, really, well, if you want, we can watch it. Yeah. And then where's
appetite?
And there was a bar, and then and everything was pretty much designed, like a grocery store designs it to get you to buy as much stuff as possible. My apartments at the time were designed to basically get the girls to get cozy, get a little tipsy. And then I would rape them because they had.
Oh God!
That's well. In our day, we said we'd have fun and we'd have sex, but now since they had a drink, that meant it was rape.
Yes.
So I'm just waiting for the day I run for the Supreme Court or Senate.
You're gonna get Me Too'd.
I'm gonna get not even me too. I'm gonna get Blazy Fortitude, and she'll say, "Aaron Clarey had sex with me in 1998." Yeah, we did.
Cannot deny it.
Well, the best part is you can't consent to sex because you had a drink, but nothing said for the guys.
That's true.
No.
That shit.
Anyway, so along with the strategically placed Casablanca and 60s romantic comedies, there was my big statue for Dungeons and Dragons DM of the Year award. And I would try to see if I could get the girls to take their clothes off without bringing that up. Like, hey, are they going out with me? Are they going out with me for my Dungeons and Dragons award?
That's a good point. That is a really good point.
And I did okay. I did okay handicap.
Wait a minute, Cappy. You had a picture of Ingrid Bergman in your house.
I had that Casablanca poster, the one that you ordered. I did have that.
You mean the one? You mean you have a poster of a girl in your house that you've been giving me grief about for describing her as attractive? You had her in your house to impress girls.
It was like, how can I put it? It's like two inert elements, but when you combine them together, there's an explosion, there's a spark. And that's the thing with Humphrey Bogart and Ingrid Bergman. On their own, Humphrey Bogart was pretty cool. Ingrid Bergman, a piece of block wood, but you put them together and sparks fly in the movie Casablanca.
No, yeah. So let me interrupt you real fast. Adam is in the chat and he wants to give you a message.
Oh God, not Atham. Oh yeah, God, Atham. Oh
God, I need to check that out. Then.
Yeah, he just lets you know that Aaron, you cannot. Hang on a second. This is not flipping over right on the phone. This phone is ridiculous. Come on. No, I can't see the chat.
Do you have a computer?
I do, but I didn't want to run them both on the same. So I'm gonna open the. You open this up again. Really? Technology is wonderful when it works.
Here we are, geeks, and we can.
I know, right? Clarey can't compete on Fitbit, and TJ's a reluctant bachelor. Oh, Clarey also equals old fart.
Clarey is an old fart. Clarey was sick, but Clarey, hang on, I could take a look at my steps here. Talk about old man.
I think what we really need to do is innovate, and we need to create what's called, I'm calling the fuck bit. And I think, let's do that. It's pornographic, but hey, I think it'll work.
I'm not going to argue with Atham's assertion, though, that I don't have enough tobacco pipes. You can never have enough tobacco pipes. And which is funny because you guys were there when I got my latest one from that antique shop in Gettysburg.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah,
that thing has been amazing. I love it.
Okay, cool.
Out of curiosity, Teach, I mean, what makes an amazing pipe? Draw, ease of use, or what?
It's really good quality. I mean, I got it for $23. And it had all these. You'd have to see the pipe to know. Like when ants carve out parts underneath the bark, it leaves these grooves or little trails or whatever that my pipe has. And then also when you take it apart, it's screwed in as opposed to just pulled out. So it's just designed to be long lasting. And I'm not sure how old it is, but for $23, like you can't. Most really good quality pipes are over $100.
Oh, okay. So you're satisfied. I mean, I don't know, because I know what makes a good cigar. Draw, flavor, even burn. You light it once, no maintenance, the wrapper. Well, but I'm kind of curious, it's just that it's a solid pipe and you're not dicking around with it.
Right. And I think the other thing is, because I've had a lot of other pipes that are just not meant to last, they easily, because I think the inside gets burned out or whatever, the plastic part breaks. It's not very durable or whatever. And so I don't know. It's one that I'll have, or if I take good care of it and I don't lose it on a hike, I'll have for the rest of my life.
How did you lose a pipe on a hike?
I didn't lose a pipe on a hike. I take it with me on hikes, and I don't know. So,
then leave it there to fetch it at some time later.
Well, no, I have a bad habit of forgetting things or just being absent-minded with stuff. Though I'm very careful with certain things, like the pipe or whatever. I put it into a specific pocket in my backpack.
Sure, your car.
But I lost. But my other one I lost. I can't find it. I'm not sure what happened to it. It's probably at a buddy's house. I keep hearing from my buddies saying, hey, I found your sunglasses, your hat, or that cap you've had for 20 years. I just found it at my house and I have no idea why it's here. So that's why I'm saying I need to make sure, be conscientious about making sure that I don't lose it.
Okay. Well, don't lose your card. That's kind of important.
That one's a little bit easier to find.
So, Vince, we got any topics du jour today on geekery and masculinity?
Well, we can introduce Timothy, or he can introduce himself, give a little brief introduction. Tim?
Sure. So my name is Tim, and I'm another East Coaster, as I am with Vince. I live in what some affectionately like to term Mordor on the Potomac, Washington, D.C., the nation's capital. And I've been here for at least 9 years. It will be 9 years this coming year. And so I've been a long-time listener of Cappy, and recently for TJ. Not so much with the others. And I have some...
Oh, wait, this Tim. Never mind. I know this Tim. I'm sorry. Go on.
Yes, Cappy, you and I met last year.
We did, yeah. No, I thought, well, there's, Tim's a common name. I know exactly which Tim this is. Yes, yes.
Yes. How could you miss me?
Were you at the Silver Springs meetup?
No, because when he was coming through, I was going to Puerto Rico.
Oh, okay.
Each other.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Otherwise, I would have gone because it's just right up the street from where I live.
Oh, okay. Nice.
Yeah. So I got some interesting geekery that I like to throw out there, which is different from what you guys have been talking about for the past few episodes.
Go for it.
Yeah.
Put it out
Okay.
there.
Okay.
Yeah, let us have it.
All right. So I am involved with the Washington National Opera. I don't sing. Just to put that out there.
All right.
Instead, I'm what's called a supernumerary, which is, if you guys know what a movie extra is, a supernumerary is a term for an extra on a stage production.
For like, okay, so this is opera, not symphony. So like you would act sort of.
Right. So supernumeraries, they could be in a play, they could be in an opera, or they could even be in a ballet. They're just non-speaking, non-singing roles, or like
non-playable characters, right?
Non-playable characters. Well, they're kind of characters. I mean, you would find like butlers or soldiers or whatever it is. But one of my supernumerary friends likes to call us self-moving props.
So you're like an extra then?
Yeah, it's just a different term they use.
Oh, okay. That's cool.
Yeah.
I mean, it's necessary that a production, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, very necessary. And the good thing is that you often find lots of productions where they need males and not females. So
was there a surplus? Like, are females typically needed more than guys, or?
No, usually males, because again, you have soldiers or butlers, things like that. But there's not too many productions that call for females, because what would a female be? A servant or a damsel in distress or whatever it is. It's just,
I'd say temptress, but that is just
temptress. Yeah,
homewrecker.
Homewrecker.
House wench.
That's actually more for principals. They do sing.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Very cool.
Yeah.
And how did you get involved with that?
Well, it's an interesting story. So I first learned about it many years ago when I was living in my home state of Ohio, and I ran into an older couple that were doing this for the local opera where I was living. And I just asked them about it, and I thought, yeah, that's pretty cool. I would like to do that. And then I just forgot about it for the ensuing, 15 or odd some years, until I came here to DC and I happened to see an advertisement on Facebook, and I'm just like, hey, that's what those guys did. I think I'll just inquire about it. So I did, and then I started in 2012, and right now I've been in 6 productions.
Nice.
I presume you get some kind of like you could attend the opera for free or something, or.
Yeah, if you're not in the production, you can get full dress rehearsal tickets.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah, but we do get paid.
Okay, it's not volunteer.
Even better.
No, it's modest compared to what the chorus members get, because they're professionals and they have a union. But yeah, we do get paid we get paid a certain wage for every rehearsal and every performance that we're on stage.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. So I now can say I've been on the stage at the Kennedy Center, and I actually got my picture in the Washington Post, one production.
Oh, nice.
And
You
is
mean
it just
Jeff Bezos' blog?
No, unfortunately.
So is it just this one theater, the Kennedy Theater, or is it like a more like you can go anywhere? Or is it more of a company?
No, it's with the company with the see, there's the Kennedy Center, and then there's the Washington Opera. So before I came on board, it was two separate entities, Kennedy Center and the Opera, and then they merged sometime after 2008 when Placido Domingo, the famous tenor, he was the creative director. No, I'm still bummed about that I wasn't able to be there because, you know, he's world famous, but he was there and then he went to San Francisco, I think. So it changed by the time I got there.
All right, but it's kind of like out here in Vegas, like if, you know, Bally's, for example, or Caesars Entertainment or MGM, they don't just own one casino, they own several. And if you're an employee at one of those, you can go to any one of the other ones. So you got what, two theaters in the outfit you work for, right?
No, it's just the one theater. It's the opera company. So, you know, Baltimore has an opera, and there's a couple local operas that are nearby, but you have to be part of that company.
Oh, okay. And it's municipal or something?
The local ones are, yeah.
Oh.
But the DC one, this is the National Opera, just like there's the National Symphony.
Okay. You think, you see, I know the cities are going to, you know, depending on the layer of government, they're not going to merge because that would, you know, cut overhead costs and be efficient and economic, and then you could go. But you think there'd still be like this fellow professional agreement, like, oh, yes, you're with this opera, you could come to this opera. Or if you're with that troupe, you could come to this one.
Yeah, I mean, it's more like reputation. So, you know, a lot of the people that I super with, some of them have been with the company for 20 years or so. And, you know, they get around. They just happen to know others that are in other companies. You know, it's one of those things where if they have a call for supers, you can just apply and then do that. But just the fact that you're part of the WNO doesn't mean that you can transfer anywhere else. The same thing exists in the Met in New York. You know, that's a pretty close shop.
What's the Met? To show you how truly uncultured I am.
The Metropolitan Opera.
Oh, is that big? Is that something? Or
yeah, that's what you could say is like the national and the international for the U.S.
Okay, so that is where somebody, like, if you played there, that'd be like Madison Square Garden. It's very sought after.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
That's where you want to DM, Aaron.
That's where I want to. Okay.
You eventually want to DM there, yes.
My ma tried to drag me to go see fucking Madame Butterfly.
Yeah, oh, jeez.
Oh, God.
Bad choice for a first opera.
What? No, I didn't go because I'm like, what's it about? Oh, it's this Asian gal and she cries a lot because somebody died. I'm like, fuck it. No, I don't want to.
Yeah, just save yourself the trouble and watch Miss Saigon. Same thing.
But that doesn't even sound better either. I got, like, you know, that sounds like 2 hours of my life that would be wasted. Maybe I'll just watch Killy Heroes instead. Maybe
that's classic. Yes.
Yeah, or Hogans Heroes.
Yeah.
Could you imagine the opera production of Hogans Heroes?
Yeah.
I would so sign up for that. I would
absolutely.
Attend.
Hey, believe it or not, there's an opera version of Breaking Bad.
Really?
Oh, no shit.
Wow.
I'm still waiting for the opera version of Red Dawn.
Ooh, God, that actually could be kind of good.
That's epic.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, Family Guy set the stage. Unintended.
Literally.
But why would Red Dawn make a better one? Like Hogans Heroes. Like, now I'm no theater guy, but you guys remember the movie Dirty Rotten Scoundrels?
Yes.
Okay, now it's directed by Frank Oz. And this is the only thing, because I've only recognized Frank Oz, like he did What About Bob? And he has a mark. He has a signature that's easily identifiable. So if you don't see the credits, you say, did Frank Oz direct this? And his
sounds like Fozzie Bear.
He is Fozzie Bear, isn't he?
Either that or you see a really small creature levitating an X-Wing, then it's probably has something to do with Frank Oz.
Right. So what I was saying is his movies lend themselves well to a theatrical production. And then sure enough, they did Dirty Rotten Scoundrels with John Lithgow. And that's had a successful run. Hogan's Heroes has that playful kind of feel to it that you could pull that off as well.
And
but Red Dawn, how would Red Dawn?
Yeah, that'd be difficult.
It'd be difficult to pull that off.
Yeah,
well,
especially with the location.
I said that with a certain degree of sarcasm because I feel like a lot of classic novels have been turned into either musicals or operas or whatever it is, and I don't know how the authors would feel. I mean, I'm wondering how Victor Hugo would feel to know that his book Les Miserables was turned into a musical rather than just being a novel, or Charles Dickens with any of his books. So yeah, that's why I'm kind of joked that they turning Red Dawn into an opera, because it seems like they want to turn everything into an opera now. Kind of like with that, what was Hamilton, that Broadway production thing. I remember watching or hearing about it and just thought it was the most absurd thing I'd ever heard in my life.
But aren't most people who are going to the opera nowadays kind of absurd? I mean, unless you're going to a classical, like, you know, what, Madame Butterfly, or what's the one with Dulcinea? And the only reason I know that is because you got to see some great cans with Sophia Loren when she played in it. Man de la Mancha. I can see when you have classics like that played in opera, but is now I guess we should ask Tim. Tim, most people who are going to the opera now, the avant-garde, and they're just there to be there, and the opera has lost its art, or what?
Well, that's a tough one. I mean, some operas, like I mentioned, Breaking Bad, when I saw it, I just chuckled because, you know, unfortunately, when they make contemporary operas, the music is atonal and it sounds terrible, even for classical music lovers like myself. And then you think, why did you even bother? But when you're looking at something like Hamilton, well, that's a musical. Okay, so musicals are a lot more palatable to the average run-of-the-mill theater goer. I've never seen Hamilton. I've heard one of the songs, and I'm just like, I do not get what the whole hubbub is. I don't. I really don't. Apart from the fact that SJWs love it. You know, they go gaga over it. But you're like, with the classical operas, you get a lot of gray hairs that go to it because they're the ones that have an interest in this, and number two, they got the money because the tickets are usually just so expensive.
Right.
Have you ever heard, I got a buddy and he was invited, and this is probably the most opulent sign of wealth I've ever heard of in my life. But these guys get together and they fly, then boat. I don't know exactly how they do it, and then they get generators and everything, and they will go out to wherever there are glaciers. I want to say the Arctic, and they will have a symphony on a glacier that is floating in the water. And I was thinking, have you ever heard of that?
Doesn't surprise me.
Run it past your buddies or your colleagues over there, because I'd like to know a little bit more about it. The only information I have is my buddy who was invited to such an event. And I was just thinking, like, that, how does that work? And then the guy who invited him died, so there was no way to get more.
Oh no.
There was, well, he was invited, but there would have been some implications if he were to accept. And let's just say it wouldn't be a free ticket. But I was thinking, you know, you think a regular opera production with a full orchestra and all that costs a lot. I can only imagine what this was going to cost.
Yeah, to fly out on a glacier, that probably would be twice as much of what the average Metropolitan Opera production puts on.
What do tickets go for now for a full opera?
Well, let's see. The Washington Opera, the cheap seats are at least $70.
Okay.
In the more expensive, run up to about $200, $250, and that's how much it would cost for a box seat in New York.
Okay. I mean, we're not talking Rolling Stones level of ticket pricing or Barbra Streisand, but still, you know, TJ's food bill for the year.
He's so funny. Cappy, make a joke.
I will. I'm sorry. I meant to see your dating budget for the decade.
Dating budget.
Hey, the less money you spend, you know, I don't. Who wants to pay $7,500 for dating when you can spend $75?
I'm waiting for the day some nice little cougar lady up there finds you and you become her little boy toy. And you've busted your ass off working hard to become this determined seasoned writer, and you're an author, and you're on there up and up, and you got your little piece of the American dream there with your man cabin, and you've got it all perfect. And right as you set the final piece of finery into your house, then this babe who is 35 and she's loaded because her husband died. She's got this palatial estate up in the mountain. And then she's like, come live with me, little boy, cuckoo, ka-choo. And then like, you got to leave this thing that you earn. And then your soul is gone. And then you're drinking heavily. And
we never hear from you again.
We never hear from him again.
Yeah, I can't see that really happening because I got what I want.
Don't ever give it up, man. You got the setup. If you guys ever visit TJ, he does have this like cozy bachelor pad. And what really is probably going to happen is he's going to find some girl's going to find him, and she's going to say, no, this will not do. There's old male memorabilia, and there's a picture of some World War II people up there, and I don't like this. And she's going to go in there and try to change the thing. The real test will be to see if TJ collapses.
Dude, I've already had this discussion with people where they'll say, married people will say, well, what happens when your wife doesn't want to have this up there? And it's like, I'm sorry, I didn't recall it being my house, and I called it. And they're like, well, what if she doesn't want it? I go, well, I don't know. It's
too fucking bad.
Well, and the other thing is, we're talking about a hypothetical person at this point, and they're already inventing, like, this is how much they want to control you, is they invent a person who doesn't even exist and then give them personality traits. I go, I don't know. Maybe she might actually love having World War II memorabilia everywhere. And, like I got my great-grandpa, he flew, was a pilot during World War II. I've got a display case of all of his stuff up on my fireplace mantle. If some girl walked in and said, oh, I don't, after dating for a while and said, oh, I don't like that, I go, well, people in hell want iced water. Like, I'm not changing anything. So I tough. Like, it's just seeing the stuff that other men do, where they take down the Star Wars poster, or they take down the whatever it is that's kind of geeky, and the girl walks in and goes, oh, that's got to go. We can't have that in the main room. You can put that in the attic, you can put that in the basement, you can put it in the garage, but it doesn't go in the main house. It's just like, dude, it's your house, right? You pay the bills.
You'd be amazed though how many people. I mean, it's shocking. My background was a little bit like, hey, where's the money? Where's the food? And then you come up for surface and air, and then people are like, oh, your girlfriend lets you do that? And it's like, and we're not talking like, oh, your girlfriend lets you go and bang a bunch of guys at the gay nightclub. It's not that. It's like, oh, your girlfriend lets you ride your motorcycle whenever you want. I'm like, lets me. And it's sad to see these old guys, even older than Rob, just with their
hand out. Jesus Christ. You think I'm 80 or something. Fuck.
With this dead look in their eyes, like, well, you can do that? Well, oh wow, you're really fortunate. I'm like, why? Because the GF lets me, leave to shop for groceries whenever I mean, like, what is wrong with you people? What?
Shit. It's that happy wife, happy life bullshit with a dose of the man cave. It's like, no.
Yeah.
No, this is a man house.
I mean,
exactly. I have the castle. Thank you very much. And every room I'll put up what I like. Thank you.
That's kind of what I'm struggling with right now, because I have that outbuilding on my property that right now is just used for garden stuff. I've moved it all out, and I'm planning to put thin carpet down, put my antique wood stove in there, and do all this stuff and kind of turn it into a man cave. But the thing is, I'm a little concerned about that, because if I ever did, end up having a what do they call it now? Significant other, whatever stupid term they have. Yeah, if there's a long-term girlfriend, wife, wifey poo, whatever.
Vagina person. Yes.
A female who identifies within her binary, or whatever whatever they call it. But if I don't want to give her the impression that I'm like yielding the floor of the house in any way. The Star Wars poster, I have a Star Wars poster in my living room next to the fireplace. That poster is not moving, right?
And that's what you tell her. It's the poster ain't going nowhere. It's been here longer than you. I'm fucking serious, man. That's what you say. I've got artwork hanging on my walls where it's half naked or sometimes fully naked women that have been painted and done well. And the ex-wife was like, "Can we move that?" And I'm like, "No. This is my house. I bought it before you ever came along, and that poster or that picture is not going anywhere." And so she had to suck it up and deal with it, or, you can go find somewhere else to fucking live is kind of how I looked at it. It's like, same with the motorcycle, I have one just like Aaron's got one. I don't know how many other guys in this chat's got one, but I told her straight up from the beginning, that it's like, look, I ride a motorcycle. It's part of what I do. It's my passion. And,
there you go.
I'm passionate.
Exactly. I'm passionate about my motorcycle. But I told her, the bike isn't going anywhere. It's part of what brought you into my world. And no, it's not going anywhere. Same with the guns. It's like the guns I have, it's like part of them was my job at the time that I had. It was required for me to have those firearms. And so it's like, well, if you don't want me to work, I guess I could get rid of them, but I'm not going to get rid of them. I like my guns. I like my motorcycle. I like my artwork. And so you just kind of have to, you don't have to be a dick about it, but you just kind of tell them, look, this is how it is.
And this is what kind of gets me is what exactly. So I'll give an example of what I have. I have a silk American cloth flag that my grandpa flew with. And if he ever had to ditch his plane and landed in China, because that's where he was flying, he was delivering supplies to the Chinese. And it had all these different messages in different languages saying on American, take me to your command or whatever, and you'll be compensated. And then I also have a silk map of his flight route that I have on display. I then have another display case that has his uniform, his goggles with the original box, telegrams, letters he sent to my grandmother, currency, photos, and all that stuff. So what is she going to replace that with that is more awesome than that?
Nothing.
That's like, I'm
no,
thinking.
No, there's one thing, her diploma with her master's degree in social work.
Oh yeah, there is that.
That's what's going to be more important.
Yeah, there we go. But no, if you, TJ, it's the death of 1,000 concessions.
Yeah,
if you start, oh well, I'll put grandpa's uniform in the basement, or I'll put it in the attic or something like that. It starts small and it moves on into bigger and bigger, and the next thing you know, you have a man cave. And it might be in the attic, and it's about 4 feet by 10 feet. It's about the size of a prison cell. And that's exactly what you have. And you become that guy, the beta guy that she is not interested in anymore because she changed you. So you just have to kind of go, no, you kind of raise your eyebrow when she goes, what do you think about moving this over here? And you're like, why would I move it over there?
The scary thing I've learned is people will beg for forgiveness before they'll ask for permission. So they'll change stuff and not say anything. And then you might notice, or you won't notice or whatever. And then it's like, for you to change it then invites conflict over that. And a lot of these men will just keep the peace because they got so many other things. They're working a full-time job. They got, if there's kids or whatever.
Well, sure. And they don't want to rock the boat.
Yeah.
Right. And so
it's go along to get along.
Right.
Yeah, except that leads you down the road of 1,000 concessions. And the next thing you know, she's divorcing your ass and hanging out with Chad Thundercock. And you're wondering what the fuck happened. But it took the course of a couple of years for it to get there, where if the guy, I did that in my marriage. I went along to get along, and I didn't want to rock the boat. And it got to a point where I couldn't fucking look in the mirror and look at myself and like myself. And it's like, how the hell did I get here? And it's because of one little thing here and one little thing there. And so I got to a point for me where it's like, I'm still diplomatic. I'm still, I'm willing to listen. And if there's something where it's like, okay, we can work something out here, I wouldn't call it a compromise, but at the same time, you know, there's a little bit of wiggle room. There's a little bit of ground to give. But for the most part, you know, if it's something that means a lot to me, like this stuff you're talking about your grandfather with the silk flags and all that, I mean, that stuff sounds phenomenal, dude. And it's like, you know what?
Right.
That stuff, if it was me, that stuff, I would have it set up wherever, you know, you've got it, that this is where I want it to be. This is a centerpiece of my home. Notice the words mine. And at that point, it ain't going nowhere. That it's like, look, you know, just like telling my ex-wife, look, there's certain things about me that you're never going to change. You're never going to, you know, I'm never giving up my guns. I'm never giving up the motorcycle. And so if those things bother you, there's the door, because that's not going to change. Just like I'm sure you know, hey, I'm not getting rid of this stuff. And if you like it on display front and center, then more power to you. Keep it where you want it. And you just kind of raise your eyebrow, chuckle a little bit and go, no, you know, what don't you understand? The N or the O? You know?
Now, the one area I would make a concession is one of my rooms, I have copies. They're not the original versions of illustrations that I received from a World War II vet who was the first guy out of his landing craft at Omaha
Beach.
Those
are badass. I saw those.
He was first guy out of his landing craft at Omaha Beach on D-Day, and he did illustrations throughout the war of his experiences. So I have copies of that framed. Now, if the girl, wifey poo, whatever, was saying, you know, can we put other things in this room and move those over there? Okay, that's a fair concession, because they're not the original copies, and I have digital copies of those and other stuff like that. But it's just, it seems like I think the other thing is the importance of finding a girl who actually has some of those shared values in terms of like, yeah, if a girl hates Star Wars,
well, she's gone. He's gone from my world. Well, if you don't like Star Wars, or if you can't tolerate Star Wars, you need to go. You know, I watch the films. I've got them all, with the exception of some of the more recent releases, because yeah, fuck Lucas and fuck Disney. But, you know, I'm going to watch my Star Wars. And if you don't like it, then, you know, either you need to go or you need to go do something else while I'm watching my films.
Speaking of Star Wars, this weekend I watched Empire Strikes Back on VHS.
No shit.
Wait. For the first time? No. It's a serious question. I don't know if
So most people, I have the original VHS versions that came out years ago, when they were like the unadulterated, untarnished versions.
Yeah, the original versions that were back in the theater before Lucas decided to go back and revamp them. Right?
Yeah, this is the problem.
Man, those VHS cassettes are older than you, dude. Jesus.
Right, and so I got a VCR and I have an old box TV, so I'm watching it on its original glory, and I just loved these old films. We're kind of shifting over to another topic, but that has to do with, I guess, older films and also viewing them in older formats. But they keep trying to fix these films or do whatever, and it's just amazing how, even though the technology, the special effects have aged a little bit, it still stands up so much better than all this stuff now where they just use CG for every single scene.
Well, I think a part of that is because, at least in the past, and I can include Empire and the original trilogy and all that. Yeah, the special effects were cornball, especially when you see films where they've got the old stop motion technology going on, like
RoboCop. Still hold up, though.
Oh, they not only do they hold up, you're absolutely right, but not only do they hold up, but the other part that's missing in a lot of the newer movies, yeah, the CGI is better, and sometimes you can't even tell if it's computer generated or if it's a person. You kind of wonder sometimes. But the thing that's lacking now compared to older films is, now in a lot of cases they don't really even have a story anymore. It's just, a little bit of dialogue here and there and some bullshit going on there. And then, okay, cue up the next action scene or whatever. And so, oh, wow.
Wait, Robert, are you telling me the Transformers series is not going to be remembered as an epic saga?
Highbrow.
No,
it's not going to be. Huh?
So here's a geeky question that I was thinking about, because right before I watched Empire Strikes Back, I watched Rogue One, which was okay. It wasn't bad. It wasn't full of propaganda, but it also wasn't the great story. So what they did in this film is they used modern like digital whatever to recreate the actor who played Tarkin, Grand Moff Tarkin.
Yeah, that was pretty cool. Yeah, that was pretty neat.
So and then they also
Princess Leia too.
Yeah,
right.
they also did Princess Leia too.
Yeah.
So some people gave the film criticism for that because they said it felt eerie, whereas nobody says that with stop motion animation. And one theory that some people have, because they were comparing, say, King Kong, the one that came out by Peter Jackson, compared to the original, even though the technology was stop motion animation, much outdated, they said the thing is we somehow perceive that these stop motion animation figures or whatever it is are real. Whereas we look at someone like these digital recreations and we get this weird, eerie feeling, and they kind of compared it to the uncanny valley, which is where something is almost human, but it's different enough that we get this weird queasy feeling inside. And so I almost wonder if that's one of the problems with special effects now with this computer graphics, because special effects back in the day was always physical. There was no fake.
Yeah, it was analog.
It was analog, but it like stop motion animation. It was still real life animation. But I wonder if that's kind of what spoils a lot of the new stuff is we sense that it's not real. It's just it doesn't.
What it is I think it's chinsing out because it's so common now. It's just so common where it's like, oh, we blew all this money on computer graphics. There was no creativity. There was no innovation. It was just, all right, you're abandoning creativity, which would, in addition to the play script and the filmography and all this other stuff, there was this skill, this talent to have special effects, and you'd get points for that. And now that sub component, that sub aspect of movies is now gone. I mean, do they even have best special effects anymore in the Oscars?
I don't know. I haven't watched the Oscars for
because isn't it moot? Isn't it pointless by now? It says, oh, that's just computer graphics. So what? I mean, are they good computer graphics or are they shitty computer graphics? I guess if it's really good, you win the Oscar for best special effects. But there's no like, okay, how do we hide these wires? How do we make the Millennium Falcon look like it's going into hyperspace? That there's none of that. So I think people are just kind of not interested.
Well, I think
in it anymore.
Well, I know for the original, the Lord of the Rings, that was the thing for the effects, especially Andy Serkis doing Gollum.
That was new, and that was taking it to the limit. That was really creative. But now the processing power, you could even make it better. But that was what, 20 years ago, 15 years ago.
2001 with Fellowship of the Ring.
Okay, yeah, 18 years ago. You know,
God, I feel old.
I know, right? Shit. I'll tell you, old. We're talking about the Star Wars. I saw the second one in the movie theaters.
Dude, I saw the first one in the movie theaters.
That was
1977.
I wish I could claim that as well, but I cannot. Just Empire.
Tim, do you beat us on age here?
No, I'm Rob's age.
You're 47?
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
God, this is so weird. It's like me and TJ are at the kids' table. Why am I the young? God almighty, it's fucked up.
Yeah. You're almost a millennial there, Aaron. You're almost a millennial.
You battle your way up as a kid, you're in middle school, and then
you get knocked right
finally Grandma Tilly dies off. There's a seat at the adults' table for you. You're the oldest of your generation. You get to sit down, and then next Thanksgiving, all of a sudden, Aunt Gertrude comes in, and she never did. Now you're bumped back down to the little kids shit in their pants.
Goddamn right.
So
TJ and his sippy cup, God darn it.
Get your booster seat. So speaking of special effects, it's relevant to what I was going to talk about this week that I was teasing last week. So my brother bought me this little mini Nintendo ripoff from like Chinese ripoff, where it has 800 games in it, but I'd say almost all of them are the exact same game, just replicated 15 times. But what it has is a lot of games that are actually pretty good, like Excite Bike and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 3, The Manhattan Project, Super Mario, and all that. Nice. And so I remember playing. So I grew up on NES in the 90s. I was always like a couple years behind everyone else because we got everything used. My folks were not very big on video games. They kind of hated it because they thought it was going to make us lazy. So we were always getting behind. So I grew up on NES in the 90s, and I'm not sure like how old were you, or not? Maybe you don't want to say what age, but I'm curious what point in life were you guys at when you were playing NES? And isn't it kind of interesting? Also, you got to wonder how is graphics affecting games now? Because I just don't play video games anymore. I lost interest after college.
I never played.
I'll jump on that one real quick for you. I was 18. Yeah, I was 18 when I got into NES. An ex-girlfriend actually bought me that particular console. And before that, we're going back to Coleco. We're going back to Atari 2600. Any of you guys remember Gunslinger or Outlaw, where you'd shoot the guy and he'd sit on his ass, and you could walk up on him and just kind of peg the guy until the round was over? It kind of had a broken cheat, so to speak. That was one of my favorite things to do. It'd piss off my friends so bad. But yeah, I was about 18, 19 when I got my first NES, and I enjoyed it better than like my last console. That is my most recent console would have been the PlayStation 2. After PlayStation 2, I kind of went a little bit for a while to online gaming, PC games. And while the graphics have gotten better and better over the years to the point where, Jesus, they almost look alive now. The storyline behind them, kind of like movies, is lacking in my opinion. And I think in some cases, at least for an old fucker like me, that having the multiple buttons, and you gotta toggle the up, down, left, right, A, B, blah, blah. And to do a move, kind of like Mortal Kombat, when whether that was in the arcade or even on, on a console, you've got to flick and move certain directions and press certain buttons in a certain sequence in a certain amount of time to do that death move where you rip the guy's head off and pull out his spine. And it just became too much. And that's kind of how I've seen games now with the 360 or the PlayStation 4 or whatever version they're currently on. I've got a couple of friends that they've stayed in it, and I watch them play, and that's the key word, watch, just because it's like, okay, you know what? There's too much going on for me, at least. And so I want to enjoy the game. I don't want it to become a math equation. I don't want it to become a matter of dexterity of, okay, not only am I going to have a third arm with 6 more fingers, but, I'm going to have to memorize all of this shit just to make one move, just to do one fucking thing, whatever that one thing.
Game. Just for one game. Yeah. It's not like it transfers to others.
That was the beauty of the NES games, is that it was very basic. It was very intuitive. You didn't have to spend a lot of time going through a tutorial learning how to play the game.
Exactly.
And I know that there can be fanatics who play, say, Super Mario or Donkey Kong, but I think the problem I've always had with playing some of these games where you're playing against other humans is that you come across people who are obsessed with these games. And they take all the fun out of it by just they know every nook and cranny. They've mastered everything. It was kind of like when I was playing real-time strategy games like Age of Empires 2.
Oh yeah.
There were guys who had just spent hours memorizing all the short keystrokes to build everything, and they just it was not, there was the spontaneity or whatever was kind of out of it. That's why I always like games like Rush. Did you guys ever play Russian Attack?
Yes.
Did that not have one of the best theme songs?
we're going back to the 80s. I mean, this is
I'm not recalling
when Vincent had a dark beard.
So if you guys want to hear it, some guy did a guitar version of it on YouTube that you can listen to, and it's pretty cool. So
there's one I'll say that beats that is there's a guy who did a guitar version for the opening to 1943. I don't know if you guys ever played that World War II shooter. But I'll look it up. If anyone in the audience, if you want to hear some actually really cool music, that's one to check into. I was going to say, TJ, you asked about when we started playing NES. Wasn't that about 87?
It came out a little bit earlier, but I think it took a little bit of time for people because it came out, I think, in 83 or 84. That's when
No, not that early, did it?
Nintendo. So a little bit of a history. Nintendo emerged from not as a company. It used to start out with card trading company, but then the Atari and all these other companies crashed in the 1983 video game crash, just completely decimated them. Nintendo steps in and says, okay, we're going to take some arcade games that we've done, like Donkey Kong and Super Mario Brothers. They used to be arcade games, and we're going to turn them into we're going to have an entertainment system, and we're going to have good quality for our games and all that. And I think that came out in 85 or 86.
85 or 86.
Legend of Zelda came out in 87, but it took several years for people to really buy into it, because there was a lot of, after that video game crash, there was a lot of public sentiment that was opposed to investing any more in video games. People are like, why would I spend money teaching my kid how to play a video game when I can get them a Commodore 64 and teach them how to type for college or something like that?
Sure.
I mean, it was, at the time, it was a really effective argument, but then Nintendo comes along and says, we're going to learn from those mistakes. And they started coming out with some really top-notch video games which is why a crash really hasn't happened since. They also had another great game, Metal Gear Solid, the original, which I have.
Oh, that was a great one.
That was a good game.
We spent, me and my siblings, my brothers, spent so many weekends playing that game, and we would like outline the map of the whole thing and trying to figure out this base, and just we never beat the game, but it was just fun because we had to think. And we were like, it was an experience where we weren't just playing by ourselves. It wasn't just one of us playing. Everyone else was giving in their insight and thinking, what should we do, and keeping track of where we were going and all this other stuff, and keeping track of the codes.
Well, it made you social.
Yeah, it was a way of being social.
Kind of like when you used to be able to have Xbox parties or Nintendo parties, and you could connect
LAN parties.
Yes, exactly. You could connect, multiple consoles together onto, Christ, everyone brought over their television set, and you set it up in one room, and everybody had their own point of view, kind of like GoldenEye and whatnot with the James Bond game. Everyone had their own screen, but everyone's talking shit. They're busting each other's balls. They're figuring things out, where now you've kind of lost that, other than just the straight up shit talking with the tea bagging and all the other bullshit. Whoops. And of course the safe space stuff that's going along with it.
There's no it's not as social as it used to be with Halo. And that's the other thing, is that now video games are increasingly a way for kids. So that's the key. Back then, video games were a way for people to hang out. You'd have Mario Party, which came out when I was a kid. Mm-hmm. This great Nintendo 64 game. We had so much fun playing that game because it was a board game on a video game console, which was ingenious. Or you had Super Mario Kart or whatever, and all that. But you didn't have the internet, so you couldn't play with people. You couldn't avoid being social. You had to have people in your house to do all that kind of stuff.
Right.
But now kids can play and interact entirely online. And you got this game called Fortnite, where I've read 2 articles. One was about parents who were they were paying somebody to teach their kids how to play Fortnite. And then the other, which to me speaks to the importance for kids to find some sort of social community. And then there was parents who were fighting. They were in the San Francisco area fighting over who was going to be, they were trying to control the amount of time these kids who all grew up, lived in the same neighborhood, but they would all go home and play Fortnite in different houses, but they would talk to each other all day. It's almost like, seriously, it's like something out of South Park where they were playing World of Warcraft, And Stan's dad says, "Why don't you go out and socialize?" And Stan just lectures him about how social a game it is, and then tells him to get out of the room.
Well, I was gonna say, kind of pulling from our previous discussion about special effects, computer graphics in the movies. You've seen a special effects, graphics, computing power ruin video games, I'd say, more than movies. The video games, I remember, especially when you got 8-bit or maybe you got 16-bit, the graphics were a luxury. And then the programmers had to work and like, okay, we got to make this a fun game. Also, you don't have a zillion buttons, so you can't have an inventory of moves that goes up into the numbers into the hundreds. So that forced, once again, creativity and innovation and resulted in some really fun games. You had to be clever. You had to throw things and leave a lot on the floor to only have the absolute best stuff that was going to be within a video game. And now, especially with downloadable content, and it doesn't even matter. It's just playing off a hard drive. You can have what are they, bloatware. What was the game Fallout 76 where they released it and needed a bunch of patches and updates because it was just horrible?
Well,
well, hang on. My point is that all it is now is graphics and watching a movie for half these damn video games. I got for $4 now. This is a generation old system. It's for 360. I got Assassin's Creed Revelations, and they came out with Assassin's Creed about one a week there for a couple of years in a row. So I don't know which one this is. And it took at least 10 minutes. And I'm trying to push the buttons like skip scene. No. You got to watch this. You got to watch this guy who's in the thing. And there's this other guy. And look, they made the guy look like a hip millennial. Look, he's got the sideburns and everything. How we're relating with the kids here. And then this guy, he's cursing. Oh, that was some foul language. And it's like, I just want to play the game. And they put this whole backstory, because the first Assassin's Creed, if you remember, was really cool. Like, you're an assassin and you're moving in this populated market, and you got different ways to kill them, and the controls weren't too insane. And so I really enjoyed the first Assassin's Creed. Now, that never happened. This takes place in your mind, and you're part of this a modern day company that's trying to pull memory from your brain because you're the descendant of one of these assassins. And I'm like, I don't know if some washed up guy in Hollywood never got to write for movies, decide, I'm going to write for video games. Now I don't want a fucking movie. And now it's all graphics. The movement, the interplay, the game itself is not that fun anymore. It's just, well, go kill this guy, go kill that guy. Mario Brothers, Super Mario Brothers, jumping up and down. What made the people at Nintendo say, hey, I got an idea. All right. Hear me out, Chang. Hear me out. I got an idea. All right. We'll have this plumber, right?
Chang.
He'll be Italian. And like, but he's not Japanese. No, he's not Chang. He's not.
Is it going to change every time you say it?
Well, no, but there's Chang and Chang.
Muhammad.
And then there's Wang. There's three guys programming. Japanese, 1982. They're saying, all right, let's listen to the lead guy, Bong. Okay, so Jiang, Shang, Ming, and Bong, they're all there programming. And they say, we only got 8 bits on this game, guys. What are we going to do? I said, I got an idea. We're going to have an Italian plumber. All right. And he's going to run. And he's going to be out in the middle of fucking nowhere. And there's going to be bricks hovering in the clouds for no damn reason.
And pipes, large pipes.
And large pipes. And turtles that are half crows. Just really weird fucked up shit. And
there's this blonde chick.
Yes, we'll get to her later. But then you will jump. You'll have the Italian plumber jump and hit bricks with his head, and out will come mushrooms, sometimes fiery flowers. We don't know. And mushrooms will make him grow. And then when he touches the plant, he'll be able to shoot fireballs. And then there'll be other mushrooms that walk and are always frowning. They got a unibrow, and he jumps on them and he flattens them. That is way more creative than anything that went into fucking Destiny, Battlefield 5, the latest Medal of Honor. I don't even make those anymore. Imagine, but they didn't have the crutch of computer graphics or unlimited storage capacity or downloadable content or a 50 gigabyte hard drive to work with.
Nailed it.
So that's why I think the games are actual games back then. Now
there were limitations, yeah.
Yeah, and that's why I stopped. Well, for other reasons, I didn't get an Xbox One. I tried to go with the PlayStation 4, and I actually destroyed it on a YouTube video because I hated it so much. It was basically a PC. Everything's downloading, everything's updating. It's the reason you get a console is it's plug and play. You put the CD in and you play. Oh no, we got to update. We got to register. You got to create a username and an account with Sony. It's fucking suck.
And if you get fucking hacked, oh my God. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, so I've stopped with Xbox 360 because it's a stable platform. There's a fair library of games, but even then with the Xbox 360, a lot of these games, thank God, they're only $3 or $4 at GameStop. But man, about 7 out of 10, I just throw away because it's not even worth the gas to go sell it back to GameStop for 50 cents. A lot of these games are just horrible. I'd rather replay a game I liked and know the outcome.
Right.
Oh, hey, are the Nazis attacking again? I wonder if I'm going to get an M1 Garand. Oh, look, here comes the Sturmgewehr.
That's another problem with, and you've been touching on this, is that when they do first-person shooters, they're doing the exact same setting. They cannot do a single other time period, and they also, it's bad when a society, the stories they're coming out with is just sequels, prequels, or remakes of the exact same stories. You see with like Disney, they can't come up with anything new, so they sequel something to death. They when Walt Disney, right, and Walt Disney was actually staunchly opposed to sequels to movies. He's like, no, you do one movie and then you move on to the next one. Then he dies, and they have Cinderella Part 5, the other glass slipper or something like that. And it's the same thing with video games.
No, Cinderella 5 is the pansexual discovery.
With the pumpkin, right? Yeah.
The prince is toxic. The prince is a toxic rapist.
Or Cinderfella.
Say what?
Or Cinderfella.
Wasn't that with Jerry Lewis?
There you go.
I mean,
Jesus.
The only game series that has managed to survive that, and I think it's because they've had the exact same guy as Legend of Zelda. Some of the games haven't been the greatest, but from what I keep reading, I just don't play the new games. For me, the series peaked with Ocarina of Time. They should have just, it's over. It's done. Like we've done it. Let's go home. But they've come out with games, but they've been well received. So apparently with that, but Metal Gear series really started to go downhill with the second one, Sons of Liberty, because it was a 5-hour cutscene with 1 hour of gameplay.
Exactly.
And it was the cheesiest, melodramatic, ridiculous. I mean, the conspiracy web was so complex. I was in high school when I was playing this game, and I'm just sitting there thinking, what? Of course, now looking back, I'm like, wow, that's actually a pretty naive view of how the government's run now. I mean, half the stuff. That's what's crazy. So in that game, the conspiracy theory is that there's this Metal Gear vessel that will collect all data on all communication in the United States. And that's supposed to be some sort of like dark dystopian thing. It's like, we already have those. They're called Google. NSA data centers. Yeah, we've got Google. We have those things now.
Yeah, Facebook and Google. Jesus.
Right. But yeah, it just wasn't very much focused on gameplay. And I haven't played any of the new games on any of the new consoles. But I don't know. I kind of just quit because I realized how much money you could spend on video games. And I don't know. I played the original Call of Duty when it came out for PC, and I had a blast playing it for hours on end online in college. But then I think I just burned out. I think I'm wondering what you guys think about that, where you just burn out on a video game where you don't want to play it anymore. You feel like I played a 5-hour session once on Call of Duty, logged out, got up from my desk, and just thought, what did I accomplish?
Well, to jump in on that, to give you an idea. Now, granted, this is online gaming. I got into a game back in probably, good God, this would have been probably 2003, 2004, somewhere around there. It's a game called EVE Online. It's a spaceship game, sci-fi. And there's a lot of NPC stuff you can do. And then there's areas you can go into where it's PvP, player on player type shit. And, and I got into it, and it was $15 a month to subscribe to keep your account active so you could train your fucking character up and do your thing. To give you an idea, besides you're mentioning the burnout thing, I got a quick story here in just a moment to tell you about what got me there. But the game, and it's still around, you can still join up, and they've had, I don't know how many updates and expansion packs and all that bullshit. But I couldn't even tell you how many hours I spent playing that game, except that I could say that doing that, I was literally throwing away my entire life. Okay. And in it, to give you an idea of cost, there came a point, I had a laptop back then. I still have it somewhere. But it got to a point with the graphics and the memory that was needed that in order to play that game, I had to buy another $2,000 laptop just to play the damn game. And then on top of that, back in about, I want to say 2005, 2006. So I'd been in this game for a couple years. So $15.95 a month times 2, 2 years. That'll give you that idea. Plus a $2,000 laptop. I'm sitting playing this stupid fucking game, which it's not actually. It's actually kind of fun. But I'm playing this game sitting at my coffee table, and so I'm hunched over the game, and I'd been playing it, I don't know, 3-4 hours to give you an idea. And I tweaked my back to the point where the very next day, I couldn't get out of bed. I couldn't go to work because I jacked my back up from sitting hunched over playing a fucking video game.
Yeah, you should stay home and play video games.
What was that, Aaron?
I said, I guess you should stay home and play video games.
No shit. It's.
I'd be like, I threw my back out having sex. Well, I can't go to work. Well, I guess we'll stay home and have more sex.
Yeah, no shit. But it was bad, because I remember standing up to finally go to work, and I felt this like razor blade go down, my lower back at that time. And it was like, ooh, that's not good. And so my back was aching all day long when I was at work. And the next day, I literally could not get out of bed. And it was like, oh shit, and I'm thinking in my mind at the time, I'm thinking, oh my God, am I going to be able to ride my motorcycle again? Because the position, to sit on my particular bike at that time, I couldn't sit in that position. I could barely, like I said, I could barely get out of bed. And so I had to call out. And the next day after that, I took a cocktail of all kinds of stuff in order to hopefully get my back to relax. And it did. But it was such a waste of time in a lot of ways, because they kept improving it. They kept upgrading it. To the point where my second laptop, my $2,000 one, wasn't enough to carry it anymore. So if I was going to continue, it's like, well, now I got to buy another laptop at around $2,000 or so, give or take. And that's when, for me, it was like, okay, you know what? I'm done. I'm done wasting, time, because I'm sitting there thinking all these hours that I could have been doing something productive. I could have been making money. I could have been banging chicks. I could have been doing all kinds of shit. And instead, what was I doing? Well, I was fucking my back up, and I was sitting around playing this video game, which I enjoyed it. There was ways that you could, I can't remember the software, but there was this particular piece of software that you could get. And you could, kind of like what we're doing right now, you could talk to other players in game, as well as record what was going on screen. So if you were sitting at a gate or at a station and you had enough firepower and enough armor, you could gate camp. You could smoke motherfuckers as they were coming in, and it would piss them off royally as you're blowing up their ships as they're coming in. So you could record that and throw it up on YouTube and whatnot, kind of like how Twitch is doing that kind of stuff today. But ultimately, it was just like, oh my God, how much money and how much time have I thrown away? And yet the game, it's not like a console, like especially the older consoles, like what Aaron was touching on earlier, where, okay, you got the CD, there's no patches or nothing. The game is done.
It's finite.
And so, yeah, it's finite. Exactly. And now it's, no, it's not finite. Now you need to do this. Now you need to do that. You need to download this. You need to get a new memory card, or you need to get a new console. Money. Exactly. And that's all they're doing. They're just setting it up so that, okay, you're going to be this constant consumer.
Mm-hmm.
And really what are you paying for now? It's like, well, it's kind of just a waste of time in my own personal opinion. And you're watching a movie. You have 10 minutes of gameplay where you go down the same corridors, you smoke the same motherfuckers that you smoked in this game and that game. But now we have this new scene that is basically like being in a theater. Whoop-de-doo. And that's kind of when I gave up on it.
What I love about your story, Rob,
yes,
is I 100% believe you. I know you're being honest, but you said, I can't go to work because I played too much video games and I threw my back out. Like that would never fly. Never fly. But for some reason, I believe you 100%.
Well, and it flew back then. I had a very understanding boss that, he was a gamer himself, and I don't know
happened to him.
Yeah. That's what I'm wondering, is if he'd gone through the same thing, that he's like, dude, I've been there, so I know where you're at.
Go like a recovery program where like people were all hunched over, sitting in a circle, telling their story.
GA, Gamers Anonymous. Yes, it exists. It's a real thing.
Hey guys, I got a bolt. All
right.
So thanks for having me on, but I got to go talk to some real people in the real world. I'm not joking. Fine. I haven't. Aside from you fine gentlemen online and the people at the coffee store or the ramen noodle shop, I have not had a human conversation in about 3 days, so I got to get going.
You got to remedy that. Have fun.
Yep, I'll see you guys
later.
Okay, see you, Aaron.
All right, now we can really make fun of him.
Oh yeah, now that he's left the room, we can really
I wanted to say something about video games too. Is that I stopped really getting into them sometime in the early '90s, and that was arcade games. I only had just one console, and that was the Atari. Got that in '91, and I started to lose interest in it around '87 or '88. And I didn't play it nowhere near as much as I did when I was in grade school. I was in high school at the time. And, we were saying before is that those games were finite, that there was only so much you could do with them at one time. And I know that after playing video games, it's like, okay, so I really was intrigued by getting to the next level, those kind of games. And then once I mastered that, then it was just going back and upping the score. Okay, so I know what's coming on the second level. I'm just going to make the highest score that I can before I get to the third level and the fourth level and so on. And, I never had a Coleco. I did know some people that had an Intellivision. You remember that one, Rob?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
And it was kind of the same as the Atari, but then it was just like, I have more important things to do with my time. And then every so often coming back to people who were gamers, like your experience, Rob, is an extreme in my mind, but I've seen people that are just like, yeah, let me tell you about how many hours I spent playing World of Warcraft. And I just look at them like, how many hours did you do that?
Right. You got just so many hours in your life. You could throw your whole life away doing this, man.
Whole weekends just like completely blown through.
Weeks.
I think that's the delineation between the masculine geeks and just the geeks, is that masculine geeks enjoy video games and we see it as being a part of one of our hobbies and interests.
Yes.
But like we've talked
about,
it's
a reward.
We don't make it our lives.
Yeah.
And we ultimately and eventually will desire to do other things. But I think for other people who get really involved in this stuff, it's a way to, kind of like what tabletop games or whatever, they misuse them as a way to escape from reality.
Right.
So for a lot of kids, you know, they may not be in the great physical shape. They may not have a lot of social skills. They may not have a lot of friends, but you go online and that's a way of getting to know people. And you know what the other thing is, maybe this is part of it also, is for them to make friends, you got to go do stuff together. And that there's just a lot of problems with getting to know people now in our society. I think that there's a lot of anxiety about approaching people and spending time with people and interpreting each other's behavior. Whereas you go onto a video game, there's already clear set rules of what you're supposed to do together. So you immediately meet up with a bunch of people and you're in a reality or a simulated reality, you're off storming some fort or flanking maneuver or whatever. And you develop a sense of camaraderie with these people that you've never even met. And so for I don't necessarily blame a lot of these people for playing games online. I think that there's a lot of problems that there are good reasons to try to escape from. I just don't think that that's the healthiest way of doing it.
No, of course not. It's not the healthiest way to do it. You nailed that one in one right there.
Right. And so I think that that's, you know, the masculine geek enjoys games for what they are, but also knows that they're limitation. They cannot offer.
Well, they're entertainment.
They're entertainment.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But they can't define you. And the moment you have to play or you have to go there, or that's the first thing you do, that's when you get home or whatever, or you get really anxious or restless when you're not able to play. That's the sign of problems. You got to put other stuff in. Now, I've got kind of a different problem. I get anxious or restless or nervous when I don't hit the gym after a certain period of time. Like I got to go.
Yeah.
Got to go to the weight. So maybe I have that problem, except with weightlifting or whatever. But not the same.
At least with yours, you're actually, you know, improving yourself and getting better. So is it really a problem?
It's also tactile.
I would say
that's true. It's tactile. You're physically doing something, and you're getting your chemicals, or the chemicals in your body are pretty much a direct result of that tactile experience.
Right. And so
it's true.
That's why it's been struggling. I think the other problem is I always feel like it's a rat race with video games. Because like you were saying, you have to keep up with the new consoles. They last only for a couple of years, and you got to get the upgrades. Or with computers now, because it's on the internet, they can put out a crappy game, and then when people get upset, oh, we'll just put in these patches. We'll just keep patching it up instead of actually releasing a decent game from the get-go. You know, imagine selling cars and then saying, oh, the brakes don't work that great. We'll patch it up. Oh, well,
isn't that kind of going on anyway, you know, with all the factory recalls where, oh yeah, there was this little thing. It's kind of the same thing.
But that's really expensive, I would imagine, for them to do a mass recall. Whereas
it depends on the number of deaths versus what the lawsuit would be.
Right. I just think
you're right. You're on the same page.
With video game patches, you have to go out of your way to get that patch that they just make available online. They don't have to go to your house and deliver the patch in person.
Correct.
And I think that that's also why video games at a certain period of time for, you know, between the mid 80s and up to the late 90s, they were good quality because they had to be. Because if you didn't get it right, you didn't get to go change it after the fact. Kind of like the way George Lucas screwed with Star Wars after the fact.
You got it. Yep, you got it. Well, you know, and it's like kind of touching on the movies a little bit to not try to get, you know, too off track, because I still want to stay on the video game thing, but it's kind of like remakes. Like I don't know if you guys have seen the remake of Death Wish. If you've seen the original,
I have not. The original, yes, but not the remake.
Right. Now, the original, obviously, Charles Bronson, he was an architect. He was stoic. He was just kind of couldn't be rattled until he totally got fucking rattled. And, you know, to give a little credit, I watched the remake where it's Bruce Willis. He's a doctor instead of an architect. And it's a decent film. It's not worth going to the theater when it was first out. I'm glad I didn't pay to see it, but watching it online, it wasn't bad. But you know, he's this kind of soft guy compared to where Charles Bronson kind of seemed pretty, you know, pretty masculine. Bruce Willis was very soy boy in a lot of ways, very feminine until he got till shit came up and he you know, finally decided to take matters into his own hands, and then he kind of manned up, I guess you could say. But it's kind of that same idea, you know, that you've been saying. I'm sorry, TJ, I didn't mean to, you know, jump in on you there, but it's the same idea that it's like, go ahead.
In my opinion, there's very few films that have good remakes.
I agree with you, Tim.
And some of them I have to wonder, like with Ghostbusters, you know, that's the perfect example of what were they thinking? Well, we knew what they were thinking, and then you see what the result from that is. And then they want to try to resurrect it again, bringing in the old cast. It's just like, okay, so, I mean, even if they tried to have a good script with it, if I were Bill Murray, I would be like, apart from the money, why would I even want to get involved in it? Or another example is like Harrison Ford when he did Indiana Jones and the Crystal Skull. Terrible movie.
Yes.
And then the most recent Blade Runner, another terrible movie. They shouldn't have even fucked with that one. And it's just like, oh man, just leave it alone. Leave it alone.
Yeah, I've always had an interesting viewpoint of Harrison Ford as an actor, because I've never really, and I'll kind of expand on that when you're saying how a lot of these films, I guess we'll talk on the remake thing. What they're trying to do, it's the same thing with the Star Wars, The Last Social Justice Warrior and The Force Awakens. These films, they're making films, but they don't want to. So art is a reflection of values. And so that's the same with like entertainment and video games and all that other stuff. So what they were trying to do is gut the film of the original values of the Star Wars film, but retain the appearance of it by replicating it. And that's because they didn't understand what made the first couple films so good.
Yeah, it's a desecration.
They were trying to desecrate it, but they were also trying to replicate it. They were trying to desecrate it while replicating the success. And they failed because the films, like if you watch The Force Awakens, it is a remake of the first A New Hope. It's a down to the Star Wars, you know, it takes place originally on a desert planet.
The Star Killer base as a substitute for the Death Star, like we can't see that.
And then you saw The Last Social Justice Warrior that has a Hoth-like battle at the end. And you know, you look at this pathetic excuse for Luke Skywalker, in which Mark Hamill openly said, until Disney finally got him to shut up, but he was just like, that's not Luke Skywalker on film. But they were killing him. I mean, the new Star Wars movies are a deconstruction and assassination of the original Star Wars films.
Thank you.
And I think that that's what you see in a lot of these new video games and a lot of the new movies that they're remaking. What they're trying to do is say, well, that was the values then, but here's the new values. And since you're a Star Wars fan, you need to like the new Star Wars movies. You're a bad person. You know, you don't like so-and-so, or you're bigoted or prejudiced against so-and-so. So it's a very weird, it's sort of like how the new government, totalitarian governments, try and take old, deeply cherished values or cultural stories or legends of a people and then repackage them as puppets of their propaganda machine. I mean, we saw this in, the Germany during the Third Reich. We saw this with the Soviets. They would take nationalist heroes and legends and stories and turn them into agitprop or whatever they want to call it.
Yes.
And it's why they can't come up with original stuff now for movies, because it's funny how there are movies that could do remakes. I don't know if I mentioned it on this podcast or others, but there was a 1979-81, I can't remember the exact date, but it was a film called Night Crossing, about a bunch of East German families that sneak across the border into West Germany. Yeah, that is a film. The production values weren't the greatest because you have American actors and British actors, and it's confusing because they're supposed to be East Germans. So that was a film where you could do that and also make some interesting modern political commentary on just how different is East Germany from the United States now with the surveillance state. That's a film that they should remake. Instead, they're coming out with the 5th or 6th Bambi film. His mother got shot for the 7th time and managed to come around or something like that. But there are movies that could do remakes, but they just don't touch them. And with the Indiana Jones one, you know what the difference between that and the last Social Justice Warrior is? It was a bad film, but they weren't trying to destroy the old ones. They just didn't. George Lucas, I don't think their heart was really into it.
No,
no, it's just about making money.
Right. Yeah. It was a wholly money-making enterprise. But what's funny is Harrison Ford, for all of his, this is what frustrates me about him, is he really doesn't seem to like what I mean, he does acting, but for example, he never really liked Han Solo, which was like one of his best parts. He never really understood him. He wanted the character to be killed off after Empire Strikes Back. And yet he doesn't really have a good sense of what movies to take. So you see him fumbling around in his career, like that one movie, Aliens versus Cowboys or whatever it was, that I never saw. It seemed pretty stupid. And then he did the Indiana Jones remake. And then there was a whole bunch of other films that he did.
Blade Runner.
I never saw the Blade Runner one, but from what you say, it's bad. It just seems like he never knew a good script. And
well, that's an argument, TJ, for actors that, in my opinion, they should just pack it in after a certain age. You know, I saw the Indiana Jones one, and I agree with you, is that this was not what they tried to do with the last Social Justice Warrior. But when I'm watching it, it's like he's, 60-some years old when he's doing this, you know? And it's like, I don't think that Indiana Jones trying to do this shit when he's 60 years old really works, number one. Right. And number two, the story was not that great. And number three, it's like, why is he even bothering? I mean, you stop with The Last Crusade, which has Sean Connery, excellent film.
Right.
You know, that, and Indiana Jones is an 80s character. That's it.
Right. That's the other problem with these films. I did a podcast series on the James Bond films, and one of the difficulties they've been having really since the end of the Cold War is how they're trying to take a character that was created in the 1950s, post World War II, early Cold War character of British culture while the empire is collapsing around him, and they're trying to inject him into the 21st century. And so what value, how can he convey those values? And, you know, they're always talking about how they want to change him in light of Me Too, and they're doing all this other stuff that they want to change. And I was thinking, okay, that's not James Bond. Like, this is what really frustrates me about a lot of these movies, is where they try and change the character over time. And they've really been doing that with James Bond over time as well.
Yeah.
And if they, you know, with the James Bond series, if they wanted to do a new film, honestly, what they should do is they need to go back to the books. They need to read the original books, and they need to say, who is James Bond actually? Timothy Dalton tried to do that in the 80s, and people didn't like it. I think that the mood now is ready for that. But I think the problem is that the people who run Hollywood would hate, first of all, Ian Fleming represents everything they would hate. Yep. And James Bond represents everything they would hate, because James Bond is actually a pretty cruel, like cold-blooded type guy. He's a chain smoker. He seduces women.
Womanizer.
He's a womanizer. He's unapologetic about who he is.
He's a masculine man.
He's a masculine man who's got a good sense of style and taste. Like he's very particular about his watches. He's very particular about his Bentley. Very particular about all of his different accessories and his fashion and all that. And he's a guy who doesn't make a lot of money. And so it's the same thing with all these other films, and frankly with the video games as well, because if you have series, kind of like with, I'd say, the Super Mario Brothers or these other, like, how many Super Smash Brothers are they going to make? Right. And how many more characters? It's almost like our society is running out of things to say, because there's only certain, like, we're limiting ourselves. The same thing with why comedy's dying, because you can't make fun of anything anymore.
Exactly.
It's becoming a parody.
Yeah, exactly. It's one of those things that, you know, there's nothing new under the sun type of thing. And, you know, the only way I think, and this is just my own limited experience, but the only way that's going to ever really change is we as a whole need to stop fucking going to the film, stop buying the video games, say, you know what? No, you know, this is the only way to affect the change, unfortunately. I mean, we can sit here and and rail at it like we're doing tonight and say, you know, this is bullshit. Video games are bullshit. Movies are bullshit. Music is fucking bullshit, and has been for 20 plus years, maybe even more. And the only way you can really affect that change, at least in, you know, the United States economy type of thing, is to say, okay, you know what? Fuck it. I'm not going to the movies anymore. I'm not buying another new console. I'm not going to upgrade my $2,000 laptop to another $4,000 laptop. And I'm not spending my fucking money anymore. You guys have come up with nothing new. You're just, you know, rehashing the same old shit, but you're changing the narrative, I guess. You know, you're rewriting it in the sense of, okay, well, the Ghostbusters, hey, you know, now we've got women Ghostbusters, and comedy where it's women comedians that really aren't that funny. In fact, they're not funny at all. They're more sarcastic than anything, which, you know, there's a certain amount of humor and sarcasm, but come on. You know, that's the only way I think, you know, that we can affect that change to, let's get back to the story instead of the CGI and making games about fucking movies. But unfortunately, too many younger people, you know, men and women, both two genders, guys, two genders, you know, none of this non-binary shit.
I think, I mean, interested in your thoughts, everybody's thoughts on this. I have a theory. My theory is that more or less, I know that there's been good films since, but I'm saying that it really started to go down with 2003, because in 2003 you had two critical things happen. One, you had the Lord of the Rings Return of the King released, which was very epic. I mean, this is an example of where CGI was used appropriately, because you don't have real life elephants to go squashing guys on horses and to have to charge. And they did a lot of that in live action. More importantly, though, there was a film that came out that year that I think is actually better and more important in the long term, and that was Master and Commander: Far Side of the World.
Oh, great movie.
I think that was one of the I think that is one of the most one of the most underrated films ever.
Yes.
And I think that it's a film that could never be made today the way that it was done.
Oh no.
And the thing is, you even know, and so the reason I say it peaked there is because, so the Lord of the Rings films comes out, the trilogy comes out. I would argue that it was probably one of the best trilogies ever done.
I'd agree with you.
But you then saw, and you're probably wondering, well, what would have happened if it was released, say, 10 years later? Well, we have an example of what it would have looked like. It would have looked like the Hobbit trilogy. And even
which after the first one, I got bored.
You're right. It's like it was a short novel that was turned into 3 movies, and you had this entire edition of this she-elf who, you know, as Aaron would say, roundhouse kicking Ellie McBeal type cop, and
warrior princess,
and they just lathered that film with CG in areas where in the original films they used they used real life people dressed up and all that. And so I feel like that's why I say 2003 was kind of the end. And then you had, before that, you had Halo, the first Halo, which was a great game. You had, I'm trying to think of what else was going on around that time. I think that's just where culture almost just peaked, and everything else since then has been a degradation. Maybe there was another year where things were, and also I think it was 2003 that Call of Duty, the original Call of Duty, came out, which was a very good game because it took the first-person shooter, World War II first-person shooter thing like Medal of Honor had done and others had done, but then it says you work together as a team. And that really changed those games forever, because now you work with other people, and it really emphasized the AI cooperation and all that. But I think that's what you see moving forward with pretty much any film. Now, the one exception I think is the Casino Royale Bond film, which came out in 2006. Again, examples of where they kind of do, you know, the broken clock gets it right at least twice a day.
Yeah, so I got some comments on that. With James Bond, I wholeheartedly agree with you. Is that's a Cold War character, and if they're going to make him relevant, don't take him down the social justice route. Instead, go back to the Ian Fleming novels and see if you can retrofit any of those to contemporary society. probably not going to work because, again, James Bond is a Cold War character, with the exception of Casino Royale, because there with Daniel Craig's character, I think you really started to show what the true Bond, quote, true Bond is, versus the Sean Connery, which I still think is the best Bond.
Yes.
Versus Roger Moore, which is cartoonish, Timothy Dalton, close enough to Daniel Craig, but he wasn't in it for very long, and Pierce Brosnan somewhere in the middle. And it's, yeah, afterwards, because I saw Skyfall and I was bored, it just didn't grab me. I mean, I think some of the other changes, like Judi Dench as M, okay, I'll go with that. But the guy they put in there as Q, I did not like, because Desmond Llewellyn, he was in it for so long, and then he died because he was in his 80s or so. But then they put that young guy in there, and it's just like, what? No, I don't like.
And the thing is, so in the other films, Bond had villains. Now, granted, the Russians weren't really ever the true villains, but the context was the Cold War. And like you were saying, the context of him is he's a British spy acting on behalf of a government that has just gone from being the largest empire the world has ever seen to falling apart within a few decades. And a lot of those stories touch on that, and he's very aware of that. And in the books. And so if you're going to, my thought is, if they want to do another Bond film, they need to go back to the 50s and provide context for it. Because if you take him out of the 50s, he's just going to look like a psychopath. But you put him back in the 50s and he'll suddenly make a little bit more sense for people. But so this is the problem also with them trying to take characters from context from the context of which they lived and put them into 21st century America, or for a 21st century audience, that you have to gut them of everything they are. So then the question is, well, why would anybody want to go see a Bond film? Like, what is Bond about? What do we like about Bond? And he's gotten to the point where that's why I thought the last film actually really touched on that in a very indirect way, where the Bond girl is saying, well, why don't you just quit? Like, why do you got to keep doing this? And it's almost asking the movie producers, like, why are we still doing these series? It's over, you know?
Yeah.
He doesn't need to keep doing this for the rest of his life, and they don't need to keep doing these films, because also he's acting on behalf of the British government. Well, is James Bond reflective of the nation he's supposedly protecting? I don't think he is anymore. I don't think his values, Ian Fleming's values, are not reflected in modern British society in any way.
Correct.
Yeah, because the Bond of today is more globalized than he once was. So even though he is British, that's in passport only. He's kind of globalized. Yeah, he works for MI6, but again, he's still globalized. So that's difficult to try to put him in the 21st century world. Now, if they went back to the novels, if they got their head out of their ass and they got back to, one of your earlier points, Rob, is about the stories. Yeah, you and I are of the same age, and so we've seen the slow degradation of what has happened with video games and movies. It's just like you rely too much on the special effects, the CGI in particular, and you got away from the story. So then it turns into a pile of shit.
Exactly. And
you just can't watch it. I mean, I don't go to the movies anymore because I don't like what's on offer.
Exactly. It's all a pile of dog shit now.
Yeah, except for the odd diamond in the rough that might emerge, but I don't have to go to the theater to see that. I can just wait until it comes out on Netflix.
Exactly.
So, Rob, you were talking about ways to go after to stop supporting these people. That's exactly what I do. I buy all my DVD. I have DVDs. I don't have Netflix. I don't have cable.
Okay, so you're going real old school in that sense. Okay.
And I just realized something that I was chatting about with a gent a couple weeks ago. Libraries are the new Blockbuster.
Yes.
If you want to go see an old film, go to the library. I now, in addition to Rogue One, I got from the library, I also got a couple film noir titles that I've been watching. So I don't go, because there's a red box at the grocery store nearby. I don't rent movies from there. I just go to the library and pick out movies that I get for free. And so I don't have to support these people anymore. You just wait for it to come out. And even then, just go to Redbox. You're paying $1.50 to rent the film instead of paying $11 to go see a film.
Well, and you could always, download a little piece of software called DVD Shrink, and there you go.
Now, one example. Now, granted, having bashed Peter Jackson slightly with the Hobbit films, I think what he just did with They Shall Not Grow Old is an example of how modern technology can be used for good and shows respect for the old. Because that's clearly what he was trying to do with this film, is trying to humanize that generation. And I think my hope is with this film, it causes a lot of people to be maybe reflect on that war, and it's, in my opinion, well, separate topic, but just reflect on it a little bit. But that's where that geek kind of attitude helps, where you look at the technology and say, well, how can we take that and improve or help bring something that's old to the state that people would have liked it to be? Because obviously the films were not shot at that speed. They weren't shot in color. They didn't have voices or noise, but he's adding it because they didn't do that back then because the technology, they didn't want to. It's because the technology wasn't there. That's completely different from George Lucas making a film with stop motion animation and then changing it after the fact 20 years later, because that doesn't reflect his vision. And then, of course, it looks outdated because it's 1990 technology.
Well, I have two comments on that. So one film that I remember fondly from my childhood was the original Clash of the Titans.
Yes.
Which I think was either the last or close to the last that Ray Harryhausen did, the claymation stop action type of animation. And when I saw it as a kid, I was like 9 or 10 years old. It's just like, man, this is the shit. I really liked this, but it had a good story to it. Mm. And then I saw some of the other early Ray Harryhausen, and the older I got, and then I started to compare it to CGI. Just like, yeah, well, it doesn't hold up, of course.
Like the skeleton fight in Jason and the Argonauts.
Yeah, like that. However, you could definitely appreciate it for the skill, because that took a lot of time and a lot of skill to put together, to film it in such a way where it seems somewhat believable. And then going back to what you were saying before, TJ, about the Uncanny Valley, you could look at that and you knew it was a movie, but it seemed a lot more believable than it was with the Rogue One, with Tarkin and with Princess Leia at the end. And then the second thing is, I saw They Shall Not Grow Old. I didn't see it in the theater. I got it through other means. And I have to say that he did a really good job with it, particularly with how he told the story. So I read it on Wikipedia. He had 600 hours of recorded interviews from the men that were serving, all Englishmen. Most of which, they're probably all dead by now. So he used about 150 hours of that. And as the movie progresses, it starts off in black and white with the old footage. And you hear just the guys that are in their interviews explaining that, this is what happened when they were young, and when they enlisted, what the things they went through. There's no over narration. It's just all the guys who were there just explaining. Then when they got to the front, it changes the color, what Jackson did with the footage. And it's almost kind of Ken Burnsy like, where you show stop action or just stills, and then you have some of the film footage. Mm. And then as the war winds down and they go to demobilize back to the UK, it switches back to black and white. But you're still hearing those interviews of the guys where, when they were in the battle, what was happening in the trenches, all the things they go through. And that's really is a good testament of men who just went and did it. They didn't complain. They came back and they didn't talk about it. And they came back and they had to face hardships like, well, what does a soldier do to reintegrate back into society? But again, there's no overarching narration, and it's only colorized in certain spots.
That's really interesting, because I just not last year, a couple of years ago, had gone to the Imperial War Museum and was looking at all the World War I stuff, and a war that's really, ironically enough,
that's where he took the footage from the Imperial War Museum.
Yeah, and what's funny is they haven't made a lot of video games about that. I know that they made a recent one that just didn't really catch on, but yeah, it's an example of a film where the filmmakers actually did something right today. But I think the other problem is people don't understand how to tell a story. because
yes,
because we've replaced competence with correct thought. So if you are a complete loser who doesn't even know how to tie your own bootstraps, if the instructions were written on the bottom, you can still get a job, especially in Hollywood, the cesspool of nepotism, which I know from people who work down there. All you got to do is just hold the right thoughts, or you got to be a part of the right group, or whatever it is. And so I had one teacher who worked in Hollywood for a while, and he said it was the most atrocious thing where some idiot would write a horrible script, but he'd get it'd be made into a movie because he was the cousin of some famous movie producer or executive. Like, you had to be related to somebody to get your script heard, as opposed to writing a great script. It was an example of where some guy took Casablanca, changed the name of the movie, and changed a bunch of the stuff so that people wouldn't know, like, the names of the characters, sent it in, and some of the guys got the joke. Others said the movie wouldn't do well, or like rejected it, said it was bad. Like an overwhelming number. Like, these people wouldn't know a good story if it slapped them in the face.
I got a question for you guys, Tim, TJ, Vincent. If you guys have kind of a prediction, for lack of better words, with the state of movies and the state of video games today, with what they currently are, is what we're looking at, what we're seeing in real time right now with the current narrative and all the other bullshit we've been talking about all day now, where do you think it's going to go? Do you think people are going to, for lack of better words, they're going to fucking wake up and say enough's enough? Or do you think this shit's going to continue on and, you know, it's just going to devolve, for lack of better words? What's your guys' take on it?
Well, some of it I think has already changed because TV is much better than the movies now.
Really? I haven't, I'll be honest, I haven't watched TV in, with the exception of when I've gone over to see my dad after my mom died. I'll go over and visit with him a little bit, and he's watching, you know, drag racing or something, and the fucking commercials are enough to make me want to put a gun in my mouth.
Well, I'm talking about TV shows that are on Netflix. Like, for example,
okay.
like for example, when House of Cards started. Okay, so for the first, I'd say 3 seasons, it was good.
Okay.
And Kevin Spacey, you know, I think he's a sleazeball, but still he's a good actor, and he was with Frank Underwood.
Sure.
Okay, so I'll give him props for that. Then it started to change, and it's like, yeah, you know, I'm just not interested in it anymore. And I felt the same way with the American version of The Office.
Sure.
That was something that just went on too long. And, you know, having watched many British shows in my life, the approach that they take in those shows is that they do series and, well, yeah, they do series, they don't do seasons.
Right.
So like with the British Office, there were 2 series of at least 6 episodes apiece, and then they stopped it. That's it. They didn't drag it on for 9 years like the American Office, where then it became like any other TV show, except you had the mockumentary type of approach. Okay, that's overstaying its welcome. Some other ones, my girlfriend and I just finished a series that's called Fallet, which is an Anglo-Swedish production. So you have some English and some in Swedish, but it's an okay story, but it was a comedy drama, and it had some pretty smart humor in it. I'll have to give him that. So after the first episode, I'm like, I'm not sure about this. Second episode, okay, well, I could watch it. It's just entertaining enough. And I continued it, and then they stopped after 7 episodes. Better Call Saul, that's another one. You know, it's now coming into its 4th season, and I think that's good TV for sure. So yeah, there's some pretty good series that are on Netflix. Not on regular TV, but just streaming services.
Okay, so you're thinking that things are based on your experience of what you've seen and watched, that things are gradually getting better. Okay. Yeah. TJ, what's your thoughts?
There's a lot of different scenarios that could play out. One of the things is that what has happened is, I think a lot of the harm to the movie industry has been masked by the fact that they now have a much larger market out globally. So they don't necessarily have to do well in the United States anymore to sell movie tickets. They can go to other countries where it is what it is.
And that's a known fact.
Well, and let's not forget direct to DVD, Blu-ray, or whatever too.
Right. And so the other thing that they'll do is they'll increase movie prices. I did a long time ago. I did this is how much of a geek I am. So I was watching a documentary about, I think it was a James Cagney film, where they were talking about how in the 30s or 40s, you could still get into a film for a dime. Right. And I was curious about that. I thought, okay, back in the 40s, you would pay a dime for a movie. How much, if the price of films did not change, they stayed the same, but adjusted for inflation, how much would movies be today? And it's almost like 79 cents, around $1. Essentially, movies today should be no more than $1.50 if you adjust it for inflation. So what they've also done is raise the prices of movies to where, let's say you're taking your family of 5 to go see a movie.
Oh, fuck.
You spend $55 if it's $11 over in my neck of the woods. Over in fancy schmancy Bellevue would be like $12 or $11. So it's like $55. And then are you going to get popcorn? Are you going to get sodas? It's going to be
you're going to get ass raped for those concessions. Yeah.
So you take kids to go see a movie, then the theaters, to make up for the loss of revenue, would raise the prices of the concession stuff. Mm-hmm. So you're seeing that. And then, but at the same time, you can look at what's happened to the Academy Awards and all these other award ceremonies. I mean, this is why I talk about 2003. That was the most watched Oscar ceremony in its history. Very, very popular. I thought the production was very well. They had, what's his name? The guy from Princess Bride, who played the miracle guy.
Manny Patinkin?
No. Why am I blanking on his name? He was with that in Meg Ryan's film about being friends or whatever it was. When Harry Met Sally.
Oh, Billy Crystal?
Yeah, Billy Crystal. Billy Crystal hosted that, and I recorded it at the time. And so, like I was saying, that was a very well watched. But I think people were going to see movies back then. You can see that when you break down, when adjusted for inflation, but I don't even think that that's an accurate, when they're talking about the highest grossing movies of all time. You also have to look at the number of theaters it was available in throughout its release. Because if one movie back then, only grossed, let's say 150 million when adjusted for inflation, but it was open in 10% of the number of theaters as a new film today. And you're also seeing them start to lose. I mean, the Han Solo film was actually, from what I heard, not bad, but it got just hit by the box office. But that was in response to The Last Social Justice Warrior. So I think we're starting to see that, and they're trying to figure out, what do we do? I mean, the Star Wars trilogy was killed by that film.
Yes.
So whatever new film that they come out with, people are not going to go see it. It is going to tank. It's just going to happen. At least in the United States, it will. So they got to think, well, how do we? And I think that's actually, interestingly enough, what you're going to see is, as Americans see fewer and fewer films, they're going to start making their films cater more and more to foreign audiences.
Yeah.
And it's going to be a multiplier effect where they're going to say, okay, we need more. Let's say we want to cater to a billion Indians and the billion Chinese. So we're going to have more Indians in the films. We're going to have more Chinese in the film or whatever. And it's clearly just, and if they do a remake of a previous film like Star Wars, that's another thing I noticed about the Empire Strikes Back, is how starkly different the cast is. And when I say that, like, if you watch Last Social Justice Warrior, the Rebel Alliance is just a bunch of high school dorks, like just older, maybe 5 years older, bunch of dorks. You watch Empire Strikes Back and the Battle of Hoth, you're dealing with all these men who are just they have a sense of gravitas. They're self-confident, they're stoic and serious about what they're doing. Like, you can take these guys seriously as soldiers because they have that kind of, there's a lack of, like, they're serious, like they're solemn about what they're doing.
Yeah, well, there's some I can add to that, TJ. Is a fact about The Empire Strikes Back is the director was different. Ivan Kershner, Ivan Kershner, who was reading up about him. I don't remember what other films I've seen of his. Is that he was definitely a director who focused a lot on character development. So that's where Empire is different from the other two. The first one is kind of, Luke coming of age, blah blah blah, and things like that. But you don't really see a whole lot of Darth Vader. Then in Return of the Jedi, it's just like you're finishing up the story, but there's definitely the dark elements in Empire Strikes Back. And the character development, as you were saying in the Hoth battle, is that, all this is serious. The rebels getting their ass handed to them left and right. And it's uncertain what's going to happen, particularly after Luke finds out that Vader is his father. Where's this going to go from then? And that would get lost in translation today because you just don't have that kind of caliber of director anymore, at least in my opinion.
Right. I mean, you have those. It's almost like slapstick. What do you call it? Where someone is not being serious at a time when they don't take what's going on seriously.
Flippant.
Yeah. The Rebel Alliance, the Resistance, is very flippant about what they're doing, and it's like they're not really serious about what they're doing. Whereas when you watch the at least Empire Strikes Back, definitely the way that the characters interact with each other, the way that they're discussing their mission plans and all this other stuff, it just seems very. It's a space opera, but you can take the characters seriously. And when they're retreating and the AT-AT walkers are crushing them, you kind of like, and then the music comes in and cues sort of that somber, that solemn, almost mournful, the fact that they're basically being beat. There's that one iconic scene, or not iconic, but for me, really summarized that film. But it would never work in any of the new films because I don't know. I was watching that. I actually watched The Last Social Justice Warrior in theater, and there were parts of that movie that I thought belonged in a SNL skit about Star Wars.
Yeah, I saw some of those clips, and I just had to shake my head when you're right. They're being flippant, and then they're trying humor where it doesn't work.
Well, did you know
it doesn't work at all
when they burn the Jedi tree? Like to me, that's like, and then they kill off all the original characters like Han Solo, and they kill off Luke. They kill off Admiral Akbar in like a flippant way, but then they give the purple-haired, HR director, head of the spaceship, this very solemn death. I don't know. It's like the script got passed around, around a bunch of people who just randomly inserted stuff and then did that. I'm still angry about it because my hope is sometime in the future, maybe when I'm in my 50s, there's going to be an opportunity. There will be enough changes to where we can actually go back and reshoot the prequels, because that's the first thing I think would change. Because most Star Wars fans would have written a better prequel than George Lucas, and I think that's where things started to go downhill. So you could just say, okay, guys, we're going to remake these films. We are going to shoot the film, these movies with the exact same lens or so that they look the same as the original. We're going to use the same lens or whatever, so it has the same feel. The characters are going to be dressed the same. We're not going to use any CG. Everything's going to be real life. We use stop motion animation or matte paints or whatever, but we're going to make them feel the same. And we're also not going to blatantly contradict what was said in the first couple films in the prequels and then in these new movies that take place afterwards.
So what's your take, TJ? Do you think movies are going to get better over time because people are going to, I guess, for lack of better words, they're going to wake up? Or do you think it's just going to be the same old shit for the next 10 years?
I think that at some point things are going to have to change because the people who are making the movies will not allow. I mean, you will get to for example, when All Quiet on the Western Front was made, it was a very blatantly anti-war film, and in Germany, the stormtroopers would release rats or mice into the theaters so that people would leave and not watch it because they didn't want people to watch it. I'm not saying that people are going to do that now, But let's say that a movie comes out that the media decides is, I don't know, maybe there's someone smirking in the film and they decide this film is hate and it gets banned from theaters. Kind of like what happened to the Boondock Saints, frankly. And it gets banned and it becomes a cult film. But even then, just people are very worried about being caught watching this film.
It's their dirty little secret.
Right. I think that like my hope is that the culture and like all the problems, the things that are going on right now gets figured out in the years to come so that we can look back. And that's what really makes me sad is that we are right now witnessing a lot of just bad art that is not going to be remembered in posterity. People are not going to look back on these films and all this art that's been created, like music, like look at modern architecture. It goes beyond all that stuff, but it's the same with movies. Think about how much was squandered with the new Star Wars movies. They had the original cast members for a while. They could have done a good story if they'd wanted to, and instead they completely squandered it. Then those actors, like, it's never going to be done again.
Right.
At least with them, you can't have another movie with. There will never be an opportunity to do a film, Star Wars film about Luke Skywalker at that age with Mark Hamill, because by the time you would be able to get around to do that, he's going to be dead.
Right.
You just have to reboot it in some fashion, or maybe you take a different tack with it. That instead of making the movies that you have in the past, you make them into series. Because there's plenty of material that's in the Star Wars universe, just like there is in the Star Trek universe.
Right.
Yeah, I think there's just, like I said, a lot of different scenarios that could play out, and they could occur simultaneously. Because another thing that could happen is, like with the video game industry, the Hollywood movie industry could collapse. I don't know how.
Let's cross our fingers.
No shit. That's what I was just gonna say. Let's hope so.
Well, I'm just wondering here, not to really get on this topic because it's not germane necessarily, but just it's relevant to the question. I think that our economy, just everything about the way life is right now, is not sustainable, and it's going to change, and it's going to change in a very radical, holistic way. And so the question is, how will that affect the movie industry? I don't know, but I just, like you were saying, I hope the change will allow for new films to be made. And I
think it's more of it's a case of when the crash happens, then what does filmmaking look like? Because when Hollywood first emerged, you had people that wrote good stories. They came from a literature background in some cases, and they were experimenting with the new medium that is film. And so you look at the movies from the heyday, the 20s, 30s, and 40s, and even the 50s, because I'm watching Rear Window now. And, you know, that's billed as one of the greatest movies of all time, Rear Window. And the thing that I noticed about it is that it takes place only in one room. For the better part of 2 hours, you know, and it's only really about a handful of characters, and yet it's billed as the greatest movie of all time. And that was probably how much did Hitchcock make? That was on a $1 million budget back in 1954, which was a lot of money back then, versus 15, 20 million, however much the budgets of the movies are now. So maybe there's going to be a return to more auteur type of filmmaking. And because you have the explosion of handheld cameras and cell phones and all that you have a lot of amateurs that are exploding the indie market. And then TV is much better than movies are now. So you already have the seeds planted of what movies might look like in the future once the Hollywood machine collapses. Who knows? But who knows what it's really going to look like, because it's all going to be about, hopefully, people are going to pay more attention to how it was back in the old days, where it was more about the story and not about the images.
God, you can hope so.
Well, what's funny is you were saying $15 to $20 million. Yeah, we would. How about $200 million? That's how much they spent on these Pirates of the Caribbean films. That's how much money they spent on the Han Solo film. I mean, this is what's killing them, is if they would just spend less money on these films, they could end up making some decent amount of money, but they spend all this money on the production. Then they spend hundreds of millions of dollars on advertising for these films. And the thing is, with like The Force Awakens, the reason that they had to do that is because they had to get people programmed to like, these are your new characters, you will like them. We're not giving you a choice. Like, this character is awesome. Instead of going to see the film, you had to, you know, the action figure and all this other stuff. Like, you were already familiar with the characters. So for you to say you didn't like them or you didn't like the film was almost, they're going to make it so that, they're not going to say that you don't go see the film. I don't know what it's going to look like, but I think the problem is what we're seeing is anytime somebody tries to do something independent, they get deplatformed. And especially with something like film where you need to have financing, most likely, then you're going to have to, and you're doing anything controversial or independent, you're going to get shut down.
Yeah, that's how it is. That's how it is now.
Yeah.
All right, gentlemen. It was a good talk. I enjoyed listening too. I'm sorry I haven't actually added too much, but my throat is really bothering me tonight.
Sure, I was hoping to get more into my geek topics, well, it's not so much about maybe we could table this for the next discussion. Is I started off with opera, but I'm also a heavy classical music fan and have been for about 30-odd some years, and that's something that definitely in my experience I have not seen too many, shall we say, classically masculine men who really have a deep interest in the subject. I can talk at length another time about the kinds of people that I've encountered who are classical music fans, and some of them are decent. A lot of them are pretty much stereotypical what you would find people that are in the arts, and just older people. Not so many younger people, unfortunately. But that's for another time.
Right. Absolutely, yeah. We can definitely talk about that again. Once again, this has been Masculine Geek Episode 3. Rob, do you want to go ahead and give your contact
you can go ahead. You bet. You can reach me on Rob Says, that's ROBSAYS.net. You can find me on Twitter at __. Those are the two primary platforms that I'm on. You'll be able to find my links to my YouTube, all of that stuff, Instagram, all that other stuff, all the other social media. But robsays.net's the big one.
Excellent. And we always have this in the show notes as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Tim, do you have anything you would like to plug?
So I don't have a web presence, but I'm slowly making my way around different podcasts, one of which is TJ's.
Oh, okay. Cool. Excellent.
Yeah. Speaking of TJ's podcast, you can go to my website, tjmartinell.com. That will have all the links to my books, podcasts, and other great stuff.
Excellent. And you can find me on vincelarosa.com. And from there, you can check out all the other stuff that I do. All right, gentlemen. Great talk once again. This is Masculine Geek Episode 3. And look forward to having you back, Tim. And we'll sign off now. Thanks, everybody, for watching. Bye.
Bye now.